Go.
Good evening, everyone. I'm now calling to order this regular meeting of the Board of the Indianapolis Marion County Public Library. And we'll start with the roll call. Ms. Gilbert, please.
Mr. Biederman,
Present.
Mr. Lane,
Present.
Dr. Palacio,
Present.
Dr. Payne,
Present.
Ms. Tribble,
Present.
and Dr. White.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
The chair recognizes a quorum. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Indianapolis Public Library Board of Trustees. As we continue to advance the mission, vision, and goals of the Indianapolis Public Library, we're looking forward to another productive meeting. Today, I'd like to start with gratitude to the College Avenue branch for opening your facility to us and hosting our meeting tonight. We will hear from College Avenue's branch manager in a few moments. I will say with pride that this is my library in a couple of ways. It is 6 minutes from my house, which is by car. It might be a little longer walk. But also, I grew up going to church at College Avenue Church of Christ, which is right across the street, literally from 5th grade to 12th grade. And so I always saw this place. Well, not actually, it wasn't here that long ago, but I grew up near here. I grew up in church here, so happy to be here. So before we hear the branch manager's report, I want to reflect on the last year and talk about one of the aspects that I'm most proud of with this board. And that is that the board has expressed unwavering support of intellectual freedom, the freedom to read, in the face of national headlines on censorship and the banning of books, and even local activity. In April of this year, the board formally affirmed our position on intellectual freedom to support our library staff and our collections, displays, and programming against censorship. And we continue this commitment. And to be clear, by this we mean our full commitment, extending at its foundation from general support of NDPL staff led by our CEO, Gregory Hill, in maintaining collections that are diverse and robust on perspectives, including marginalized and underrepresented voices. And our full commitment includes the specific, such as the current moment when the NDPL team is working hard to plan and promote important programming during Banned Books Week, which starts October 2nd. So that's Monday. Just announced this morning on October 2nd, the Indianapolis Public Library will host local best-selling author John Green to have a conversation on the topic of celebrating our freedom to read. Later in the agenda, you will hear more about the library's ongoing leadership to educate our patrons and greater community about the importance of intellectual freedom. And one other thing that I would like to bring to your attention that has happened recently is a partnership that the library and the Library Foundation have entered into with regard to an event called A Conversation with Weathering with author Arlene T. Geronimus. It will be on Tuesday, October 17th at the Indiana Landmark Center. And from 7 to 8, Dr. Geronimus will be introduced by Tamara Winfrey Harris and will be in conversation with John Kroll about the concept of weathering. And it's a book that concept is, the book is based on 30 years of public health research. And weathering describes the physiological effects of living in marginalized communities that bear the brunt of racial, ethnic, religious, and class discrimination, and how this leads to inequity in health and life. So it's a free event. The library is a is a partner, and I think all of our employees will receive information about it. And I hope that we flood Indiana Landmarks to talk about such an important aspect. And I think that aligns so well with some of the priorities that we have regarding health and life and equity. So, thank you for your kind attention to my remarks. I would now like to introduce Mr. Chase Martin, College Avenue Branch Manager, who will report on the community and services. And thank you for hosting us tonight, Mr. Martin.
All right. All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. All right, President Tribble, members of the board, welcome to the College Avenue Library Branch. My name is Chase Martin, and I am the branch manager here at this location. I have been in this position since this past July, and previously I was a public services librarian at Central. Before I start talking about the college branch, I was a participant in the library's career development program, the first wave of that. During that program, I got to meet with library leadership and other people to discuss my years of service as a manager at another public library system, and that my desire was to be in management with here. So without that program, I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you guys today. So I do appreciate that program, and thanks so much for the library for providing that. So talk a little bit about the College Avenue branch area and how we've served this community. Our service area has a population of about 33,000 people. Quick breakdown of that is about 58% white people, 29% Black, 4% Hispanic, and 3% Asian, where 93% of the households in this area report English as being their primary language. In 2022, we had about 890 new registered borrowers. About 88,000 people walked through the door, and we had about 326,000 checkouts. We offered about 89 programs where 5,000 people participated in those programs. And then all right, as I mentioned earlier, I came to this branch at the beginning of July, and it certainly was a busy summer for the College Avenue branch. Before my arrival, the staff had a presence at the Juneteenth at Tarkington Park celebration. This is a celebration that usually happens the Saturday before Juneteenth, just so it doesn't compete with other Juneteenth events. And the staff at that time interacted with about 70 people. Similarly, we have the booth at the North Church Farmers Market at the first and third Thursdays of the month. That runs from July through September. It's at the North United Methodist Church, 38th and Meridian. And it was a great place where we were able to promote summer reading, some of our programs, services, and we handed out several registration forms at that meeting, at that event. And then one of the first things I did in my first week was I attended the Friends of Tarkington Park meeting. It was a call-out session that they were trying to get a group ready as friends of that park. They're interested in maintaining the integrity of Tarkington Park, and they want that area to have a positive impact for the community. And it was just a great chance because there was an overlap with many of our community partners, particularly at the from the farmers market, the Juneteenth celebration. So I did get to meet many people at that event. And then finally, just this month, we got to participate in the St. Joan of Arc French Market. That is a school that is in a church that's just a block west of here. It's the first Saturday after Labor Day. It's a free admission outdoor festival that celebrates French food and culture, and it's right here in this neighborhood. We were in the children's area for that event. The organizers provided us with a bookmark craft for the children. So while the children were working with the bookmarks, we got to speak to the parents about some of our programming for children that was coming up. We interacted with about 107 people at that event. And I've included a picture of some delicious pommes frites that I had at that event. So that is one of the benefits of going out in the community. Sometimes you get to sample delicious foods. But Avenue branch also has some cool partnerships and initiatives within our walls. One of the first things you'll notice when you walk in our hallway here, you'll see signs for the Marion County Health Department COVID and Flu Vaccination Clinic. We are one of 2 branches in this system that has a dedicated space and times for these clinics. The clinic here is open 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday. Throughout the summer, they've had a table right outside the door that had free COVID test, along with a mask and some health information. And we'll be seeing a lot more interest in this clinic as they get the updated vaccine, which they're expecting towards the 1st of October. We also have the Pause to Read program that goes on here. This is a program for reluctant readers where they get to read to a therapy dog. These 15-minute sessions, they'll read to the dog, and it helps them build literacy skills and confidence. This has really proven very popular at this location, and we are in the process of adding a second time because they keep filling up. Another thing that I've started here was a community puzzle swap. We had a patron reach out to us, and she was an avid puzzler, and she wanted to know if she could drop off puzzles for other people to pick up. And again, the process is somebody brings in their puzzles and takes a puzzle. And this is being promoted through local puzzle groups through social media. And it just is an opportunity to bring other people in who might not come to the branch and find other things that they're interested in. And then another group that we have that comes here is the College Avenue Chess Club. This is a group of chess enthusiasts who come to the branch to play every Saturday in our smaller community room, which we call the Fish Room. This group has been meeting at this branch area for over 40 years. They started in the Broadway branch, which is across the street from us, which is a preschool now. The chess club is open to all members of the community and all skill levels, and they would really appreciate other people coming in and joining them. All right. Then this next program I'm really excited to talk about. It's the big event that we have here at College Avenue. We have hosted the Flavor Fresh art exhibit at this location for 20 years. It is done in tandem with a local artist named Del Rivera Jennings. And she hosts this event under the Flavor Fresh umbrella at other places around the city and nearby venues. And I'll just really quickly read this. The annual Flavor Fresh juried exhibition presentation series of contemporary fine art is an award-winning multi-venue Indianapolis-based artist development program, which is part of a mission to bring about greater awareness, appreciation, inspiration, exposure, and support for visual artists at all levels of expertise, utilizing all manner of discipline and media through a series of consecutive professional art exhibit venues. As I said, we are one of 3 or 4 that this event takes place at. Our particular exhibit has been officially on display since September 11th, and it will remain at this branch through January 27th. But currently, we are holding a community vote for our patrons and visitors to vote on their favorite artwork, and they can vote up to October 15th. After the vote, the winners of the community vote will be announced at the Flavor Fresh Artist Reception and Awards Ceremony at this location, which is Friday, October 27th from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and that is open to the public. And that will be right here in this community room and then also in the library area. This next slide just has some samples of the artwork that you'll find out in the main library area. As you can see, this is a great medium for expressing diversity of ideas, opinions, and people. And you'll find other artworks like that. Please come in and vote, and we encourage you to come to our event as well. All right, so looking forward, one of my first tasks as a branch manager at this location was to hire an entirely new children's staff in the middle of summer reading. Yes, and it was a challenge for us to be without these important positions filled during that time, but the College Avenue staff did an amazing job keeping our summer readers happy during that time. So we do now have a full-time children's public service librarian and then a part-time public service associate. So just of this last week, we finally brought back our story times. On Wednesday mornings at 10:30, we have the all ages family story time. And then on Fridays at 10:30, we have the baby focused story times. We have Stacy Hurt, who is the children's librarian, and then Leah Rosewood, who is the public service associate. And they're really excited to get to work and start new initiatives for the children in this community. This is a very family-heavy branch. At any given time, you will find families reading, playing, using our computers. So we feel like we have a blank page and we can create any kind of program we want, since pretty much we're all new to this branch. Similarly, we are getting our computer classes back up and running again. Our computer assistant, Josh Jarvis, who's back here, they will be hosting the Career Center and North Star digital literacy courses next month. With the Career Center, it's for adults needing help with creating resumes, searching for jobs or careers online, filling out job applications, and they'll get one-on-one assistance in helping doing that. And we see that quite frequently, people trying to apply online for jobs and their digital literacy skills aren't sufficient enough to do that. And then, of course, as I said, will be the North Star digital literacy courses, and they'll be filling in and helping with that as well. And then finally, this library has had a presence in this area for almost 100 years. On June 1st, 1924, the Broadway branch opened in a frame house just across the street from where we are now, and eventually relocated to the preschool building that's there before coming over here in 2000. We will be celebrating this milestone next year, and we're currently in the planning stages. We have a binder filled with historical documents about this particular location, and it has given us great inspiration and a jumping off point to how we want to acknowledge the 100 years next year. Then, just for a little fun, as seen on TV, I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show Parks and Recreation. It is a TV show that takes place in fictional Pawnee, Indiana. It ran from 2009 to 2015, but you can check out the DVDs here at the library. Over the Labor Day weekend, I was in Michigan, and this was on in the background, and I saw something flash on the screen, and I said, hey, that's my library, I think. So I went and found the episode, and sure enough, this location was a stand-in for the Pawnee Library in this episode, Season 7, Episode 2. So we are famous. This building is a Hollywood star.
And I hope you fired that librarian.
Yeah, if you know anything about that show, you do not want that librarian working for the system. All right. Any questions?
What a great report.
I just want to say, Chase, thank you for serving as the branch manager here at college. Also, thank you for your participation in the career development.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Maybe I'll do a little binge of Parks and Recreation. I've never seen that. I hear a lot about it. Again, thank you, Mr. Martin, and we appreciate you, the librarians here, the staff who serve the community, and thank you for that report. We will next hear a brief report from the Support Service Unit of Volunteer Services. So I'll ask Ms. Wendy Johnson, to Volunteer Services Supervisor, to come up and give us an overview of your area. And I believe this is something in response to Dr. Murtada's request for an agenda item from last month. So appreciate the quick turnaround and response to that. Welcome.
Thank you so much. All right. Do you know the note here? Speak directly into the microphone. Just remind me to do that because I'm really not good about that. See, I just did it again. So thank you all very much for allowing me to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. I do believe that this is probably the first time that Volunteer Resources has sat before the board and had an opportunity to share what happens with our volunteer engagement activities and also our internship program. So that is like check off my bucket list things to do. So my name is Wendy Johnson. I am the volunteer resources. Here I am. I am the volunteer resource supervisor for the Indianapolis Public Library. I've been with the library approximately 8 years now, a little over that. I've been a volunteer professional for over almost 20 and manage to have been part of a variety of nonprofit organizations and happily landed at the library where I have a passion for lifelong learning and a stack of books that has followed me from house to house. So I'm very happy to be part of the library and I can donate the books and then be able to just check out more and save the space on my floor, right? The thing that I am so happy about is that the library and has given me the opportunity to represent the library on a local basis at the Indiana Federation of Libraries. I've had a chance to speak there on behalf of the library community and volunteerism. I've also had the opportunity to speak on the national floor with the PLA out in with my coworkers. It's been amazing. We had a great time and had a chance to really talk a lot about how volunteers can interface with the library system. So that combined with weekly meetings with a cohort of volunteer leaders across the we're going to call it international, but it's really just the US and Canada. So we're going to say international because it sounds so much better. So I have that opportunity to meet with those folks and talk about what does volunteerism look like in a library environment on a regular basis and what are the trends and what are the things that we're worried about. And that group was instrumental in how we handled things with our volunteer engagement during COVID. I also hold a thing called a CVA. A CVA is a Certified Volunteer Administration credential. It is very similar to what you might know of that a CPA holds or that someone who is in fundraising might hold or what our librarians hold. And that certification requires an upfront testing, an essay, not my favorite, and then continuing education through library learning education units. And those education units, then every 5 years, I have to do another recertification for that process. And I'm happy to report that I just completed that, so I'm good for another 5 years. I'm not going to read through here all the core values, the ethics statement, all of the parts that make up the credential, but I did want you to realize that this is my chosen profession and that as a professional volunteer leader, I am held to the same standards and ethics that anyone else might be that would be holding a credential of this nature. There are less than 2,000 individuals that hold this credential at this time. Worldwide. I'm always promoting it. So if you know someone who's in the library world or in the volunteer management world that would like to know more, I'm happy to talk about it. So we're going to talk a little bit today about volunteer engagement and the internship program. We're going to fly really high. There are lots and lots of details, and I could sit here and talk to you for days about how awesome our program is and all of the amazing things that we've been doing, but I will not keep you that long. I've been told that you'd like to be home before midnight. So I'm going to do that on my part. You'll notice that I haven't called this the Volunteer Engagement Program, and that is because volunteer engagement is not a program. It is a strategic part of our organization. It is not something that we turn on and off like we can summer reading program. It has a start date, it has an end date. But yet when we talk about the internship program is a start and end, and we'll be talking about how that all works. One of the first things that people ask me when I'm first approached about volunteering and volunteers at the library is, well, what the heck? How many volunteers do you have? What happens at the library? What can I do there? But I'd like to start here first by saying I am extremely proud of our staff for embracing volunteers in all of our branches. I can tell you that back in 2019, that number was 69%. We have made huge inroads into embracing volunteers within our branch and departments. And that is all because of our leadership. It is because our leadership believes that volunteers are an integral part of our community and that we need to be treating our volunteers as part of our family. And so we're going to see some of those, how we do that in a little while here. I'd also like to say that 96% of our branches host volunteers on an ongoing basis. So that means that a volunteer comes every Monday, every Tuesday, every Thursday, pick a day, and they're with us for approximately 3 to 4 hours every single week. And that is pretty darn amazing that in today's world where time is a commodity that is very short for most of us, that we have this level of engagement in all but one of our branches on an ongoing basis. Many of our departments also engage in volunteers outside of the branch world. That would be our programming department, the folks that handle the summer reading program and the seed library and all of the special authors that come in and talk to us. And they just have been phenomenal at bringing volunteers in on a regular basis. Outreach department and my volunteer resources department also utilize volunteers because we like to, walk the talk. So we have volunteers engaged in our role as well. Shared System has utilized groups of volunteers to help with RFID tagging, to help shift books, to help set up entire library systems when new schools are open. It's been pretty cool to see them reach out and say, we can use volunteers, that'd be great. And then, of course, the Library Foundation utilizes volunteers as well during annual campaign time. Also during the Circulate event, we have volunteers that are represented there as well. Our largest user of volunteers is the Indianapolis Public Library bookstore. That Indy Library store utilizes over 50 volunteers every single week. Day in and day out, they hardly ever take a break. Those volunteers manage the library processing of materials that are donated to the library store. They also do pricing. They also have great coffee break. They do all of the book sales as well. So they are trained to run the new point of sale system, and they are trained to do tallying, and they are trained on how to process materials and help our guests as they work through the sales that happen 6 times a year. So we're very proud of those folks. Lots of things going on. So here are the numbers. In our library, we have approximately 350 ongoing volunteers and group members represented each year. That for us is approximately 10,700 and some hours. This data is from 22, and you'll notice that there are 2 months that are missing. We went through a ginormous data conversion to a new database product, and I will tell you that that data is there, but it's probably not worth pulling it all together, because if you look at the pie chart will look exactly the same. We have some very strong, loyal volunteers, and that data doesn't seem to change. We go up a couple, 50 or so, we go down a 50 or so. We are in a rebuilding process after COVID, so that is partly why these numbers, I'm not worried about those 2 months that are not represented here. The next logical step is to say, okay, so you had this many people, so what is that really worth? What's the value of those people? Excuse me. To do that value, the logical brain, my accounting friends, my HR friends would say, okay, what's the dollar value? What are volunteers really valued for? There's an organization called Independent Sector that has for over 20 years valued what a volunteer's hour is worth. That number continues to increase. About 10 years ago, they split the numbers down by state, so we can now calculate a value by state. Indiana's value is $28.84. That's a lot. If you think about it, it's more than our minimum wage, right? So your volunteer time, if we calculate it out, gives us around $311,000 of in-kind time donation. The other way that we can calculate volunteer support and their numbers is to say, well, how many FTEs is that? How many staff members does that represent? And I hate it that we say that because that's not what volunteerism is about. But if we do the math, we end up with a little over 5 FTEs. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy and commitment to the library. But I would welcome you to say no to these numbers. This is not the representation of our volunteer workforce that we want to be out there. I ask you as the board, as volunteers, do you want your time and your passion and your commitment and all of the struggles that this organization has been through over the last years to be represented down to $28.82 or to an FTE? I'm hoping that you say no, that's not how my passion and my commitment should be measured, because I can tell you that that's not what our volunteers want either. Our volunteers want to be measured and valued for their impact that they make to the library and to the passion that they have for the library and what they bring to our staff and bring to our programming. So please, when you see the numbers and you say, well, I'm on the library board and I'm going to compare it to the YMCA or I'm going to compare it to other organizations that you are connected with, know that that number is not a true representation of what our volunteers are doing for us and how they support us. Dr. Sue Carter-Kale provided us with some research. She's been an expert in the field for the last 5 years, doing really in-depth discussions and doing a lot of research on what is the impact of a volunteer, what is the value. And her last research says we need to take a holistic approach. And that is what will be happening with our volunteer resources and our volunteer engagement in the upcoming year. We will be walking away from reporting a lot of these numbers as numbers and talking about what is the impact, what is the holistic approach that these volunteers are providing to the library. The first part of that is to say that volunteer engagement is a strategic priority. It is part of our strategic plan, and as a strategic priority, we want to make sure that we are in line with all of the strategy of the library and that volunteers are following that strategy as well. Many of the folks that work with me and that I am peers with will hear me always talk about the 4-way win. Everybody knows about the win-win, right? There's a 4-way win. When you manage volunteers, when you engage with the volunteer environment, that 4-way win starts with your community. How are volunteers supporting and being part of the community at large? And being a part of our community in that win, there is so much value for our volunteers and for our community to support our volunteers. There in our community environment is a healthier place to be. You may have seen the report from the U.S. Surgeon General recently about the loneliness epidemic, isolation and loneliness epidemic. In that report, one of the processes or one of the goals to resolve the epidemic is to get people into volunteering. It makes for a healthier community. It makes for people who feel good about themselves to eliminate that isolation. So we want to make a healthier community by engaging more and more volunteers. The secondary win for us is what's the win for the library? How does the library win when we bring volunteers and interns into our structure? Well, I can tell you from a handful of staff members who say, oh my gosh, it was so great to have someone come and fill in the blank, whatever that is. whether it's cutting out craft materials or assembling things or being the second person in the room for a youth program. All of those things support our library. They support how our patrons can come to us and the fact that we can host programs that need a greeter. They do our special events. They come to Kwanzaa and hand out programs. They are part of the library as a whole, and they have a passion for the work that we do. Our staff have to win as well, and our staff will tell you that it's great to have faces that come in on a regular basis and know their names and are excited to be here. And with as much staff turnover that we have, our volunteers are stable. They're not going to float from one branch to another. As Ms. Tribble said, this is my home branch. And that's how our volunteers feel too. They have a home branch. That's where they're going to stay. And sometimes, don't say it out loud too loudly, but they train our staff. It happens. So where is that stuff? Oh, I can show you. How does that work? I can help you with that. Our volunteers are here and they are consistent. And that helps our staff in a lot of ways. Finally, we want to make sure that our volunteers are getting what they need. What's their win? And for us, that means that they feel the passion and they have an outlet for that work. And being a volunteer at the library is one of the coolest things they can do. And that's just not me talking as the volunteer leader. It's what I hear from our volunteers. They love the work. They come to us to be a volunteer. Little known secret, I don't do any active volunteer recruitment. All of my volunteer recruitment is passive because people are knocking on our door. They want to be part of this organization. So those are my 4-way wins. My goal in life is to always set up 4-way wins for all of our volunteers, for our staff, for our organization, and for our community. And that's partly what makes this a strategic initiative for us. Additionally, if you refer back to our strategic plan, there are 2 key areas in our strategic plan that call out volunteers. It's a little subtle, but I'll take it. Our first priority here is our racial equity strategic objective, where we want to make sure that we've increased staff diversity. Well, volunteers are staff. They're unpaid, but they're still staff. They're part of our workforce. So it's important to me that we are looking to increase and improve the diversity of our volunteer population. And I'll talk about that in a minute, how that's going to happen. We also want to make sure that we are continually and intentionally working toward an organization where racial equity is embedded in our culture. What better place than volunteers? We want the representation. We want racial equity. We want it to be represented in our volunteer population, as well as our staff, as well as our patrons. We want it to be equal, equitable. Secondarily, we have a partnership in our strategic objectives. I partner with anyone who comes along and says, I want to be a volunteer. Whether that's a group, whether that's a nonprofit organization, whether that's a civic engagement, if that's an individual person, I will partner with them, I will bring them in, and I will find out more about how we can continue that partnership down the road. We are a strategic priority. We have goals to make that happen. We'll be providing meaningful support to our staff and in their work. We want to realize any policies that come along that volunteers can be engaged with, whether that's our youth protection policy where we've said there have to be 2 unrelated adults in any youth program that we offer. Boy, I've said that a lot. Volunteers can be that second person. That frees up our staff. It takes the burden off of our staff so that they don't feel like they have to have 2 staff members in the room. That way we can provide volunteers for that role and to fulfill that policy. We also want to look at building program capacity. I'm sure you guys have heard about the Seed Library and how amazing the Seed Library is. The Seed Library is reaching capacity. because there are almost only so many times that you can take a bulk order and break it down into itty bitty teeny packets with seeds that are the size smaller than a grain of sand. Volunteers and volunteer groups and volunteer engagement will be able to increase the capacity of our volunteer and our seed libraries. So we can reach out to more of our branches. We can make that happen by engaging in those volunteers. So we're looking at taking program capacity and how can volunteers make that a stronger, bigger, more targeted type of program. We want to engage our volunteers who represent our community and our patrons through racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. We've talked a little about that. You'll hear more in a minute. We prepare our volunteers to be advocates for the library. And this is something that we don't really do a really great job of right now. So there'll be a training series that will be coming out for our volunteers in the next year so that they can learn about what else happens in the library. I come in and I put books on the shelf, or I sort books, or I help with the hold list, or what else happens. Just like you who are learning about all of the amazing things that happen within the library every time you meet, our volunteers need to know about those things too, so that they can be great advocates for us. So what do our volunteers do? That's always the second question. How many do you have and what do you do? Our volunteers do pretty much everything. Starting out at the branches, they do collection support, they do program support, they help with public computers, they help our patrons learn how to hold a mouse and how to create a Gmail account and how to talk about anything computer, mostly printing to our multi-function printers. Our volunteers are engaged in special events and projects. We've talked about Kwanzaa, but they also help with naturalization ceremonies as greeters, helping our country's newest citizens on the day of their swearing in. Our volunteers are part of the library store. They are part of Library Express, which is our homebound delivery program, where volunteers are matched with patrons that cannot get to the library for whatever reason. And we make sure that our patrons have access to materials. Sometimes those volunteers manage the patron's account from beginning to end. I think you'd like this book. If you like that one, then you'd like this one. And sometimes they're more of a delivery service. It doesn't matter. Our volunteers are there to help provide support to our patrons who cannot get to the library. We also have our Pause to Read program that Chase mentioned. Pause to Read is a partnership with the local certification organization. Every 2 years, the dogs and their handlers are certified so that they are eligible to come into our library structure. At this moment in time, we have approximately 12 partnerships that visit library branches, and that number is growing.
Ms. Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
you're going on 25 minutes.
All right, I'll go really
And
fast.
I'm enjoying this, but you said we were going to get home before midnight.
I did. I did say that. All
All
right. So we're going to zip past partnerships. As you already know, I partner with a lot of organizations. I partner with a lot of schools. We work with Providence Cristo Rey, which is the one I wanted to highlight for you. We've had 3 staff members join us after their tenure with us as a Providence Cristo Rey student. We also work with a lot of supported volunteer organizations. A supported volunteer is one that comes with a community guide or a job coach. Fun fact, 11.2% of our staff were volunteers before they were staff members, which I love that number. I think that makes me very happy. So let's talk about our internship program.
I'm going to give you 2 more minutes.
3 slides.
Okay.
3 slides.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Here we go. We started the conversation in 2021. We launched in 2022. Let me get back to this. When we launched, we now have 7 high school interns. We have 3 university interns And we have 2 professionals that came from the IUPUI University Library. Super excited about it. This was our first launch, and we continue to grow this program. This program will be streamlined. We'll see some really awesome things happen. Overall, volunteer engagement and the internship program have some pretty serious goals for the upcoming years. You can see those there. My very favorite one is that we'll be matching library demographics with volunteer demographics and doing a much better job of bringing volunteers in that represent the libraries that they hang out in. Your takeaways, here you go. Here's your last slide, your takeaways. Takeaway-wise, I want you to remember 4 things. Volunteer engagement within NDPL is strategic. It is not a program. It is a part of our culture. Volunteer support staff, 100% of our branches and many of our departments and growing. We have opportunities for additional volunteers and groups and interns, so please tell your friends. Send them my way. I'll be happy to find a location for them or an opportunity that makes sense. And volunteer engagement is more than numbers. It is about impact. Whole bunch of people I want to say thank you to, but mostly I want to say thank you to our volunteers and to you for allowing me to have this opportunity to chat with you. I'll see you in a couple years when I have all kinds of new things to tell you about and you give me more time.
Thank you. It was a great presentation, and I enjoyed reading it before we came here, but we're trying to be a little more disciplined about our time, and we're learning a lot. So are there any questions, though? I don't want to, I also wanted to make sure we had some time for questions.
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
Go on, Steve.
Oh, I just wanted to say, yeah, thank you for that presentation. It was really great. I recognized one of my comrades in there when he was 17, when he was going to Heron High School. So
Yep.
he came in and he spoke at this board meeting during the CEO search process. So it's good to see, like you're right, when you engage people into the library, they become advocates for the library. So it's really good to see that. And I had one excellent volunteer. I had many volunteers from you that were excellent. But one that I got to catch up with recently, I wanted to tell you about was my Minecraft club volunteer when he would come in. Like you said, he taught me how to play the game so that I could help the kids, really learn it and things like that. But we had lunch recently and he was telling me about all his goals, and he's in college now. So it's really cool to maintain those connections with the volunteers that come in through the library. It's such a powerful experience. My question is about the Library Express program, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. Do you have, for some reason, I just imagine that one being a hard one to pull in volunteers because it requires driving. Is it like that? And is there, I don't know, some kind of support we can do to get, I guess, more volunteers for that program if it's needed?
We have completely reimagined what Library Express looks like. Originally, Library Express was truly a match to match. One volunteer, one patron, didn't know each other, not their neighbor. This patron needs assistance. We have a volunteer who can assist. And over COVID, we had to do some pretty significant rethinking because volunteers were not delivering materials. We were doing curbside service. I mean, there was a lot of adjustment that needed to happen. So fortunately, I have one of the most amazing bosses ever, Maggie Ward, and she's the director, leader, manager, pick a title of the outreach department. I was going to say something snarky, and I won't, because I love her. So what happened is we said, okay, wait, how can outreach help make deliveries while we don't have volunteers? And then we said, well, wait a minute, we have a whole bunch of volunteer or patrons who just want deliveries. They manage their own accounts. So it wasn't that the volunteer needed to manage their account or what books they wanted or reader's advisory or any of that. We just needed a delivery system. So we brought a volunteer in to do courier service for those volunteers that Maggie and her team manage. And then every now and then an itty bitty might show up on a patron's desk or door and deliver materials. And that gave us the freedom to say, we want the right volunteer for the right patron in the right location. And we now have several of our matches that actually walk to Central Library, pick up the books and walk to their patron or to their home branch. So to answer your question, yes, it's difficult, but it's also one of the most flexible opportunities we have. You can deliver whenever. You don't have to deliver during the workday. You can deliver on the weekend. So yeah, great question. Dr. White?
Yes, Ms. Johnson, great report, and I'm glad I read it before I got here
Thank you.
because I don't want to miss anything. How do we celebrate and say thank you to all these volunteers?
We have an informal process and a formal process.
I'm more in tune with the formal process.
All right. The formal process is one that I have to say thank you to the Library Foundation. I'm going to get my thanks in here one way or the other. I say thank you to the Library Foundation because they are the ones who fund our formal appreciation events and activities. It is based on the number of hours or time that a person has committed to our strategy, to our goals. So we start out at 50 hours and or 6 months, and our volunteers receive a volunteer lanyard and they get their ID badge. It looks just like ours. It's amazing. Something that they've never had before because they've always had sort of a generic badge. Now they have their very own. It's become a status symbol. They get service year pins that happen at 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10, 15. And then every year and hours, we do some other kind of gift for them. And that comes from my department. We also have funding that goes out to each individual branch with recommendations on how they can do a formal recognition during April, which is the Volunteer Recognition Month. It usually corresponds with Library Week. So we usually do those things in tandem.
But we haven't gotten a sponsor or a company to have a big annual event for volunteers like an appreciation dinner or something like that.
We do appreciation dinners every other year. We tend to hold those at the Children's Museum because they are the best bang for our buck, and they always have rotating exhibits, and that gives us something fun and new to look at. We've tried several different things, but that seems to be where our folks enjoy going. This past year, we used our money wisely and saved some dollars and gave all of our volunteers 2 tickets to see the Loom. And I will tell you, that was the best received recognition that we could have ever given. I have not ever received that many thank yous. So we'll be looking at more cultural kinds of activities on the off year from the we meet together years. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? I know. She's keeping the clock. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. And I, like you, Dr. White, read it before I came, and I had questions too. So I'll send them to you. Ms. Johnson, volunteering is critical, and I think this was great information for the board to hear. And I hope that if you haven't had a chance to look at it, her report is awesome. Next on the agenda is public comment, and I think this is a record. In my tenure, there is no public comment. So we've saved a little time there. We'll move forward.
No public.
Oh, we love public comment. There's no public comment. So we'll move on to approval of the minutes. We have minutes from 3 meetings, an executive session, a regular and special meeting. So we had a special meeting on August 15th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from August 15th, 2023? It was a special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Please call the roll.
Mr. Biederman,
Approve.
Mr. Lane,
Approve?
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne, Dr. White,
Approve.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
The motion carries. Move on to executive session from August 28th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of that executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The meeting minutes have been moved, approval of the minutes has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, I do have one correction, I believe. The call to order shows Secretary Biederman was, but it should be Dr. Payne, I believe. So we need to correct that. I think that there are a couple of corrections on page 2 with counsel and counselor, and I can show you those later, Angie, but I'd like to have those corrected spelling. And I think that's all I had on those. There are no other, any other changes? If not, I guess I would need to move to approve as amended. So is there a motion to approve as amended?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Biederman,
Approve.
Mr. Lane,
Approve.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne, Dr. White,
Approve.
and Mr. Roll.
Approved. Okay. So next will be the regular meeting of August 28th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of that meeting?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
And is there any discussion? So I was mistaken in the last one. I flipped my pages too quickly. On page 2 in section 2, and the paragraph that talks about acknowledgement, we just want to change it's city county counselor, the spelling of that, and then the next paragraph, counsel is referring to our attorneys, so if we can change that to COU and SEO. Any other changes? Hearing none, I guess I would move to approve them as amended.
So move.
Second.
Any additional comment? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Biederman,
Approve.
Mr. Lane,
Approve.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne, Dr. White,
Approve.
and Mr. Roll.
Approved.
Thank you.
The minutes, the motion carries. We'll move on to committee reports, and we'll start with the Finance Committee. Dr. Payne?
Yes. Leader, Mayor, would you please come up? We have some bonds to.
Good evening.
Good evening, President Tribble and trustee members. Mayor Rankin and I are here to present the treasury report for the month ending August 30th, 2023. Mary will go over the revenue and I will review the expenditures for this month.
Hi, this is about the operating fund, which is our primary budgeted fund. For the revenue for the month of August, the property taxes, we do not receive any this month. That's standard. We get more towards November. Intergovernmental revenue, but our property taxes have already been received at 60% of budget. Intergovernmental is 58%, but it's on target to what we received last year. And the charges for services, public printing revenue is consistent month to month. Plus we received catering revenue, and so it's 15% higher than last year, likely due to more events taking place. Miscellaneous, our interest revenue continues to grow due to higher account interest than last year. Our total year-to-date interest earned is $773,187. And these two funds are the primary driver. The Hoosier Fund at 5.4% earning rate and Trust Indiana at 5.29%. Those are annual rates, but, and then we have a graph that shows a month comparison to the same month a year ago. And the intergovernmental, you'll see, is the largest for the month to date in both months. So it's very consistent year over year, but our charges for services are higher. And year to date is also compared to the prior year. So, does anybody have questions about revenue for the operating fund? Okay, we'll go to expenditures.
Okay. The expenditures, we're 8/12 into the year, which is 67% of the budget. And if you reflect on the chart right here, you'll see that we're way under the 67% of our projected budget. So for the personnel services, we spent 1.8 million more than last year. However, we budgeted more because we knew we was going to have raises and move everybody up to market. However, we are 10% under the projected budget. And the supplies, the expenditure are higher than last year. However, the month was slightly lower in the cleaning and sanitation account, and most likely it was due to the timing of receiving invoices. Then our other services and charges is 11% increase. Is consistently dealing with legal and cleaning services. In addition, we renewed our professional liability insurance as well. And our capital outlays are comparable to last year's year-to-date expenses. Again, here's the graph to compare month to date from last year, August 22 to this year. And the bar seems to be consistent, but again, our budget is a little bit higher. And then the year-to-date amount. And I think there's a probably issue with the personnel service. I think, yes. So I think that graph needs to be revised.
Oh, those are just month to date instead of annual.
Yeah, it looks
It's
like
the
one is
same
year to
number.
date, the other, so I can revise that one. I just now noticed that, so.
It's a big discrepancy.
Yes, it is. That's why I was looking up like, oh my goodness. So
We
that
had
will
a
be
big
revised.
hiring. We had a big
We're
hiring.
gonna have to explain that.
So,
Yes.
Lolita, may I ask a question?
Uh-huh. You want me to go back?
No, this
Oh.
is fine. I was just looking at that and how you all are talking to us about the budget. And I
Mhm.
wonder if it might be helpful on your graphs to include budget so that when we compare, we see what happened from last year to this year,
Mhm.
but we also see how we're tracking to budget.
Okay,
right?
I sure can.
So that'll give us kind of that visual all in one place.
I sure will.
That would be great.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for the recommendation.
Mhm.
Any questions on the expenditures?
Is it time? Okay, so we have received the report of the treasurer, and I'm looking for a motion to accept the report of the treasurer for August of 2023 for filing for audit.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call, please.
Mr. Biederman,
Approve?
Mr. Lane,
Approve.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Approve.
Dr. White,
Approve.
and Mr. Trible.
Approved.
Thank you.
The motion carries. We next have three resolutions related to the final bond resolutions for Central Library, Nora Library, and Pike Library branch projects. And I think you all remember we passed resolutions that then went to the council.
Yeah.
The council has approved it, and now we will approve the final resolution.
Yeah.
These bonds are all similar, and so what I would like to do is I'll give you time to talk about it, or do you have much to talk about?
No, these three
Okay.
resolutions went through the finance committee and they were approved to move forward to the board.
So
for approval.
okay, so it
Yes.
has been recommended by the finance committee. So what I'd like to ask is for consent to pass all three of these together so that we don't have to do separate votes. Can I have consent for that? So resolution 61, 2023, resolution 62, 2023, and resolution 63, 2023. May we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so it has been seconded, and is there any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
So in the resolution, it says that it's approved for $6.1 million, right?
Each.
Each.
Uh-huh.
But we're not gonna pay $6.9 or so million after it's paid with interest? Is that the cap?
It's 6.1 million plus interest.
But there's a part that it says that we will not pay more than $6.9 million
Right.
after it's all paid off.
Yes. And which we're gonna try to pay it off within a couple of years. So it's gonna be
Right.
less interest.
And what was the interest again?
It was 5%, I believe.
Estimate.
Yeah, estimate of 5%.
So the bond resolutions will have not to exceed numbers in them because you don't know pricing yet
Right.
because they haven't gone to market. But it has a not to exceed number both in length
I like it, yeah.
and interest rate and total indebtedness. So that's what you're approving is those maximums.
Right.
Given that you don't know what the market will bear when these go to market in approximately 6 weeks.
Thanks, yeah, I like it. It's good that we have the cap.
If that's a good point, Dr. Palacio. If there is money left over, what happens to that additional money?
Well, within the bonds, there's, each bond is for a specific location and other capital projects. So we have to utilize them all.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So there would not be any money left over.
it's not supposed to.
Okay.
We're supposed to utilize it all and within, what, 5 years?
Yeah, it's 80% within 3 years.
Yeah.
And 25% within 5 years.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call to approve resolutions 61, 62, and 63, 2023.
Mr. Beederman,
Approved.
Mr. Lane,
Approved?
Dr. Palacio,
Approve?
Dr. Payne,
Approved.
Dr. White,
Approved.
and Mr. Roll.
Approved. The motion carries. Thank you, Adam, for bringing the heat. I feel it already. Okay, what's next?
Next, we would like to review, we did complete our 2022 audit, and Mayor Rankin will provide a summary of this audit.
The annual comprehensive financial report for 2022 financial highlights. We received a certificate of excellence in financial reporting for our 2021 report that's included within the financial statements. That is a special honor that we apply for, and it goes through another review. So we have already submitted our 2022 report as well. And we have received this award the past 32 years.
Awesome.
So it's,
Congratulations.
well,
For the
it wasn't me, but it's one of the reasons I was attracted to working here because I had known some of the accountants before and knew their excellent work and reputation. To go over our government-wide net position as of December 31, 2022, you'll see there's an increase of 13.8 million, which was 7.9% over the net position at 2021. The unrestricted balance is very healthy there at 38.8 million. Then we also have a general fund presentation, and that balance just for the general fund also increased, and that was an 11.3% increase in the fund balance. And the general fund balance as a percentage of expenditures is nearly 100%, which means that that's very healthy. We would be able, to go a whole year if we had to, but we don't want to do that. But
So our current general fund balance, cash money on hand, is almost the total amount of our annual budget.
expenses, yeah,
Expenses, okay.
for 21, yeah, or for 22.
And that was at the end of 22.
Okay,
That includes accruals and rainy day fund.
okay,
So all that's reversed back out.
great.
Mhm.
And these increases are, why do we have the increases in the fund balances? We're just saving more?
Being good
Spending
stewards of the
less?
dollar.
Good stewards, yeah, expenses were less than budget.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And the government-wide, that includes many accruals as well, so that's a
Okay.
very healthy position. Yeah, we paid off bonds early. Well, not early, it was scheduled, but we did pay off like 15 million last year in 2022, so very healthy overall.
That's great.
And this will be available on the website shortly.
Yeah.
We'll send an email,
The complete report will be available on the
which is
website.
107 pages.
Right.
Any questions in regards to the ACFR?
I will say that I sat through the audit exit meeting, and the auditors were complimentary of our finance team and our situation. And so congratulations and thank you for helping us and making sure that we are good stewards. And thank you for the work that goes with that. That achievement is the Government and Finance Officers Association. It's called GFOA. And it's pretty rigorous, and it also requires like timely submission, and so it's something for us to celebrate. And I am very thankful because I know how that work goes. So,
Thank you.
all right, congratulations again. Any other
President,
yeah.
I just want to say thank you also for the sleepless nights that go into producing all
Yeah,
this.
it's work.
Long nights.
Any
Any
other-
questions? Any more questions?
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. We're going to move on to the Diversity Policy and Human Resources Committee. Mr. Biederman.
Great. Just two small items for today. They're informational pieces only, no action required today. First, we are in line with some of the results of some of the surveys we received. We're having our first training session this Friday for the board. It's going to be a very exciting day. Looking over the agenda, I, for one, am very excited to spend all day with Dr. Payne.
Yeah, right.
And so that's item one, and then item two is the CEO evaluation process. We are engaging a outside consultant to put together the instrument, deliver the instrument, and get input from several levels in the library with regard to that CEO review. Over the next month, we'll be developing the instrument and talking about it at the next committee meeting. So thank you very much.
Great. Are there any questions for DPHR committee? And thank you. Those are two very important things. And thank you. And thank you to the board and to the committee for, thanks also to the board for everybody being willing to dedicate some hours. On Wednesday, we're going to spend on Friday, we're going to spend the whole day together. Pray. And be thankful, because I think it's going to be fruitful. So thank you for that report, Mr. Biederman. If there's nothing else, we'll move forward to the committee's facilities committee.
We have no resolution for approval this evening, but Adam may have a comment. You have a comment, Adam?
I don't believe
Angie, please mark that down on the record.
No comment.
The committee did take a tour, right?
No, because
Okay.
we had to delay our tour until next month.
Oh, I'm
We
happy.
haven't.
'Cause I
Well,
was-
you couldn't join us.
Right.
That wasn't the main reason. We had some other conflicts that prevented us from taking our tour, but we will.
Great. Awesome. Look forward to
Is
this.
this a joke? I won't believe Adam.
He wants to say something.
Okay.
You could see it.
If there are no more comments for the Facilities Committee, we'll move on to the Library Foundation update.
All right. Every month, the Library Foundation provides an update to the Library Board. The detail of that statement is in our packet. Just a couple of highlights, though. Kim Ewers and Roberta Yeagers of the Library Foundation, they're taking the 6-week certification course, Achieving Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion through the ISO 3415 standard. It's a very exciting journey that they're about to embark on. There's going to be the Library Foundation is funding the fall 2023 nonprofit series at Central Library with support from the Meridian Foundation. It's a 10-part series that runs through October 21st. It covers topics from starting 501c3s to developing boards of directors, strategic planning, volunteer management, and a whole host of other things. Yep, excellent work. And then there were 150 donors who made gifts last month. Some of the top corporate donors include the Arthur Jordan Foundation, CICF, and the Indianapolis Foundation Library Fund. This month, the Library Foundation was proud to provide more than $200,000 of services to the library, including a number of initiatives, the Young Author, the YA Author Visit, On the Road to Reading, international festivals and celebrations, and growing global citizens. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Very excited to hear about ISO. ISO is
I have a question.
Yes.
There is a scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
Million Children's.
Yep.
I think that's such a wonderful thing. Can
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
say
So
more
we
about
are.
that?
Yeah. So we are currently in the process of raising for that. I think we're going to have a bigger presentation on it
Okay.
when we get closer to the goal.
Okay.
But everyone on, at least most of the people on the library board have contributed to that important scholarship for advancing education of diverse candidates in the
Tell who
library
she
system.
is. Million Children.
The first Black librarian of the Indianapolis Marion County Public Library. Yeah.
Very
Yeah. So it's a great thing that
good. It is.
we're putting together.
So people can still donate.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Always. Always.
Call to people to
If
donate.
you want to donate tonight, you can as well.
I think Roberta Jaggers, who's the executive director of the foundation, is in. Do they have like a quiet portion of campaigns where they like get seed money from
Well,
everybody?
it's
and get
less
people
quiet
on
now.
board? Oh, I know. But I think that's where we're in the quiet portion, and I think next month they're planning to
Yeah.
be more
Okay.
public about it.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very exciting. Thank you for that report, Mr. Biederman. Are there any other questions about the foundation? Oh, I was saying that ISO training for our diversity, JEDI, right, is really great. ISO is an international organization that sets standards for everything. And so I'm very excited. When I saw that, I was very excited to know that, especially those areas, right? Wendy's like, yes, for the volunteer management, that we are moving in that direction. So thanks to the foundation for that. If there are no more comments, we'll move on to the report of the CEO, Mr. Hill.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Board President, board members, public. First, we have the confirming resolution 64, 2023, It is the monthly confirmatory resolution related to finance, travel, and personnel matters conducted between each board meeting. The resolution is in its typical format, and I would ask for your approval.
Thank you for that. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 64?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second?
The resolution's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call.
Mr. Peterman,
Approve?
Mr. Lane,
Approve.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Approve.
Dr. White,
Approve.
and Ms. Trillo.
Approved.
Thank you.
The motion carries.
All right, thank you. And I'll have a brief robo report here quickly before we move on to our final presentation. Again, good evening. The staff of the Indianapolis Public Library continues to focus on supporting lifelong learning in the city of Indianapolis. System-wide communication, we continue to hold staff meetings at branch locations and departments. In August, the executive committee held its meetings at the Hallville branch and the College Avenue branch. We held our town hall meeting on September the 19th. At the September town hall, we had 181 staff members join. In July, we had 174, and in May, we had 186. September 20th was also our Vendor Appreciation Day. We had over 40 vendors participate in Vendor Appreciation Day. Some of the feedback we received included that I sincerely appreciated the event yesterday and the opportunity to speak with you all in person there. It is my honor to serve the library. Another comment was, thank you so very much for the lovely luncheon today. It always feels nice to be appreciated. So thank you for the staff and EC members who helped put the Vendor Appreciation Day together. Thank you. Lastly, the Indianapolis Public Library proudly hosts the #1 New York Times bestselling author and Indianapolis resident John Green on October 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Central Library. John Green will participate in a moderated conversation about banned and challenged books and intellectual freedom. A couple adult program highlights. In August, the library began offering digital creativity workstations at East 38th Street and Central Library branches. Patrons can reserve the workstations in advance and use them to support multimedia projects like audio, video, and image editing. Each workstation includes tools from Adobe Creative Cloud. Patrons have already used them to create materials for a small business, edit video projects for social media, and learn Photoshop and InDesign. We are committed to providing programs in the language our patrons speak. In addition to our ongoing Spanish programs, August marked the beginning of multilingual computer classes at Michigan Road Branch. These focus workshops teach patrons core computer skills like Microsoft Word, Excel in French, Swahili, and Kinyarwanda. We ended the month with a special film screening of Silver Carnation at Central Library. The film tells the story of Iranian TV celebrity Faridan Farrokhzad before and after the country's revolution. The story is told in Persian with some parts in German. The film introduced our audience to new cultures, all while revealing a part of global history people may not know enough about. We'd like to thank our patrons with Iranian Women of Indiana and film director Ray Sartipi for planning the event. A couple of juvenile program highlights. Many branches continue to offer high-quality weekly story times for children 0 to 5 in August. Our fall programs for kids 0 to 18 are kicking into gear now. Back to school means back to book clubs for partners at the Resource Treatment Center at a residential facility supported by the Indianapolis Public Schools that provides comprehensive mental health treatment for youth who are suffering from emotional, behavioral, developmental, and psychiatric challenges. Our teen program specialist, Kirsten Weaver, visits monthly to read with students and conduct a book discussion. The reading levels of the teens cover a wide range, and for some, the book club experience is their first time reading a book from start to finish. Thanks to a generous grant, teens can keep the books, another first for many of these teens. Participants are excited and engaged, sharing the books with other teens and residents and staff working at the center. They are currently reading The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and the biggest concern is teens not spoiling the book because they like it so much that they're reading ahead of the rest of the group. So that concludes my verbal portion of my report. And next, I would like to invite John Helling, Chief Public Services Officer, and Autumn James, one of our interns, to do a brief presentation on community engagement at NDPO.
Thank you, John and Autumn. And I just want to say we are looking over into the promised land. It's 8:30 is departure time, and so we're excited to hear this and make sure that we have some time for questions because we're a very loquacious board, right?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. I am John Helling. This is Autumn James. We are here to expediently talk to you about community engagement at the Indianapolis Public Library. This is also a presentation that was in response to Dr. Murtada's question, so we want to
Okay.
make sure to give that some time and get
Thank
some good
you.
information out there. Absolutely, our pleasure. Okay, so, oops, we're back at the beginning, I think. So, can someone get the slides to? Okay, well, while that's happening, I'll just go ahead and talk because you all have the slides in front of you, and folks in the audience can look in the packet, I think. So we wanted to talk about what exactly community engagement is. That was kind of Dr. Murtada's prompt to us. So there's a lot of different definitions of community engagement. The one we tend to use is I found one that a definition that represents how we feel about it, and it says community engagement is at its best made up of reciprocal collaborations with local, regional, national, and global communities for the purpose of a mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources. So this is, oh, there we go. Thank you. So why this is a great definition for us, first of all, it makes reference to communities, plural. I think it's important to recognize that obviously Indianapolis is not a monolith, but even one single neighborhood is not a monolith. There are often many communities, many overlapping communities, and we want to make sure that we're engaging with all of them. It also describes this engagement as two-way. So while we're learning from our patrons, they're learning from us. It's not one party pouring knowledge into another party and just walking away. It's a two-way street, which is important to note. So this, I'll say, when I sat down to put together this information, this presentation, I put out a call for information from our staff, and instantly I got about 12 presentations worth of response. So I'm not going to go through that all, obviously, but this is just a sampling of the variety of ways that we kind of live out community engagement. And I'm going to walk through just real briefly. I'll just pick one example from each of these slides to talk about to make sure that we have some time at the end for questions. So here are some examples from InfoZone that I thought were good examples of the kind of day-to-day micro level community engagement that we do. Each of these is an example of how the InfoZone, basically through their daily operations, is talking to the community, figuring out what their needs are, and then going and delivering those programs and services on site. I'll choose the last one to highlight, the bottom one, because it has to do with Fathers and Families Center, which is one of my favorite organizations in Indianapolis. If you know anything about that organization, it's basically teaches dads how to dad and how to be a better dad, and gets people life skills and financial skills and job skills. And as a dad, I just like that. That's really cool. So we go there and we provide information on how to access library resources. We talk about library programs. We sign folks up for library cards. We connect them with programs like the Career Center if they need that, and those kind of things. So that's the micro level. This is something, and this is vocabulary I learned from Autumn a couple weeks ago. This is information about community engagement at the mezzo level, the kind of intermediate level. How we engage with groups of patrons on the organizational level. So these are all coming from the Warren branch, and these are all examples of how they partner with groups in Indianapolis to essentially be a conduit, and we let the community engagement flow through us. This is these organizations talking to the community through us, and we're participating, but we're a bit more of a medium, I guess you might say. So the one I guess I'll highlight here is the Nurse Family Partnership. So if you're not familiar with this program, it's a pretty amazing program where families with brand new kids are partnered with a nurse who is basically dedicated specifically to them. and they make monthly visits to talk with that family about parenting information and just making sure that family's information needs as far as babies go are being met. It's a really impactful program, and we're happy to help people connect with that and provide that access. And then on the macro level, so this is how we talk to all of our patrons at once with these big, broad survey tools and things like that. So after every survey, we give every attendee the opportunity to tell us what they think about that specific program, about what we did well, what we did not do well. So after hopefully they got done learning from us in the program, we want to then again learn from them. So we aggregate all that data into a big old database. And this is a snapshot. This is a very good example of something that could use its own presentation at some point. This is really interesting, I think, for you folks on the board. This database, which is available to all staff through our intranet, gives our staff the ability to chop up and disaggregate the data and see how their programs are performing. You can break it down by gender, by race, by location. You can group different sets of programs together. And you can really see how your patrons are describing your program back to you and back to the library. So it's really powerful. And, like I said, this is a good example of how we're trying to talk to people on a bit of a global level. And there's a lot more that I don't want to go into too much detail right now, but a lot of branches have found their own kind of unique ways to engage their community just based on what the branch needs and what the community needs. Wayne Branch, as you may know, you may have participated in this yourself, but every year for summer reading, they invite community members to come read directly to kids. So that's a good opportunity for the organizations to come to see what we do, for elected officials to come and see what we do. And we can learn from them what they're seeing, what they think about our operations and those kind of things. And then I also want to say it's not just public services who's engaged in community engagement. Basically, every department of the library does this. So facilities, for example, is doing listening sessions about our long-range plan. We also do outreach and listening sessions when we remodel branches such as Nora and Pike. When we were remodeling the Curve, we actually engaged a consultant who talked specifically with like Shortridge High School and Wheeler Mission. So that one-on-one engagement with those organizations to know how we can serve them from a facilities point of view. Encyclopedia of Indianapolis and the special projects section of the collection management department also does a really good job of community engagement. They're doing things like attending the Norwood neighborhood meeting, hosting scan-a-thons, and I just learned today that we are planning an oral history training for any member of the public or any community group that wants to come and learn how to capture and preserve their oral histories, because those are obviously endangered, you might say, in terms of that information going away. So every bit of the library, basically every bit of our operation is funded on some level by community engagement. That's the main point that I want to express to you all tonight. And then to get into a little bit more detail, I invited Autumn to come talk about how community engagement works in the social work field, which is obviously a bit of a new venture for us. So we're learning all the time.
So I'm Autumn James. I'm an MSW social work intern. I've been here since May, and I am in my internship through December. So I've got a lot of info. I'm going to try to go through it quickly. I do want to give credit to Yana McGraw, my supervisor, who the vast majority of this stuff is 100% hers, but she is on much deserved PTO right now, so I'm going to try to do my best to sum that up. One of our other interns, Alyssa Potts, also helped with some of the data management. So this is just really one aspect of what we do with social work at NDPL. And so this is a numbers by the numbers of what kind of service provision we do. So when we're working one-on-one with patrons and connecting them to community resources, this is that data. So there's a lot in here, but I want to highlight first just some parameters of the data. So, Yana started in 2021. So those numbers, that 178 total connections, is just from July to December. 2022 is that whole year, and then the 2023 numbers are the first 3 quarters. Some other important info is that in 2021, there were no interns in the program. 2022, we had 6. And then so far in this data, we have 3 interns represented. We have 2 more that just started with us last month. So about 12% of these person-to-person numbers are tracked by interns. Yana is doing all the rest. So Yana increased tracking 86% year over year from 2021 to 2022 as more people learned of these services. There's also a 46% growth from January to August 2022 versus January to August of 2023. So this is a continually growing program, and there's a lot of demand still. So then we kind of broke those different connections down into what kind of services. And I just want to highlight the biggest ones are housing and homelessness assistance is one of the biggest things that we work with our patrons. Some of the other big ones are transportation assistance and mental and physical health assistance. Here's also just a snapshot of some of the different branches impacted. Again, a lot of this speaks really to capacity. So we've always got somebody at Central, so there's a lot of data that we're able to collect at Central. And then interns have been able to help some with some of those other branches. I myself am in the West region, so pretty much all of those numbers I think are me for the 2023. And then I want to jump to some of the specific initiatives that NDPL Social Work does. So again, that's just the person-to-person service assistance. These are things beyond that. So one of our programs this year that Yana has organized is the Coffee and Conversations, where we work with a community partner to do some educational opportunities with patrons and the community. We had 4 of those this year, and in 2024 anticipate an expansion to include 6 more committees. The resource fair also last year was our first one, and we had 50 social service agencies represented. We also had a teacher resource fair that included 30 community partners. Our community resource fair for this year is next week on October 4th. And we expect to have over 60 community partners, so it's continuing to grow as well. Another new initiative this year was weekly tabling, which we do every Monday at Central. This is a regular opportunity for our community partners to come in and connect directly with patrons. So that started in our first quarter. There was a connection with 86 patrons, and we had 8 organizations that were coming out. Our second quarter, we had 16 organizations come out throughout April to June and connected to over 300 patrons. We are still collecting connections, of course, for our third. And we have so far worked with 8 organizations again this quarter. Again, more initiatives, we've got a lot going on. So we have tenant and conversations, which are specifically working with renters, tenants, and landlords, discussing rights and resources. So I think that our numbers are a little bit off on this one. So I think the 3 is for 2023, and there are 4 that are planned for 2024. Because our next one is October 4th at our community resource fair. Our bus ticket program is also something that is very popular. And in 2022, we distributed over 900. So far in 2023, we have distributed over 300. That decrease in numbers is not because of a decrease in demand. We are trying to be really mindful about the limited resources we have. We also have been able to distribute longer term bus passes. In 2022, it was mostly like single rides, so more tickets per person. Then also in November for Staff Day, Yana has organized a panel discussion that is for staff to connect with community partners who are working with unhoused populations to have a discussion and engagement as far as how to best serve our patrons. So what I handed you was our updated referral form. I have it on the slide, but as you can tell, it's a little bit different to hold it in your hand versus seeing it. So this is one of the things that I've done in my time here was kind of update our form and make it more hopefully patron friendly was the goal. So originally our form was, it's hit the basics, is very clear, but it was also something that tended to be stored behind desks at branches. So patrons would have to come up and, express a need for this service that a lot of people don't know about. So I created a brochure version that has a lot of that same information, but also includes information about specifically what social work at a library can look like, as well as office hours for the branches, which is when we see that one-to-one, person-to-person service provision that we talked about earlier. So moving forward to the future, some of our goals. First, we want to increase the branding of NDPL social work to try to get the word out. Again, we've seen the capacity continues to grow, like the demand continues to grow as capacity does. So we are working on getting some information on the website. We would love to have also an online referral process and an Ask a Social Worker, just like we have an Ask a Librarian on the website. Some other things, just last week we hosted 2 different training sessions for mental health first aid for the security staff at Central. And we have another one coming up in a couple weeks for the LSAs that are working in the branches. Mental health first aid is a national program that provides people with an ability to identify mental health concerns, hopefully before they get too concerning, and then also be able to direct those patrons to resources. That's something that we've consistently heard from staff is one of the biggest needs. So I'm really excited that we were able to bring that to our security staff, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to do that. There are a lot of other trainings too that we would love to engage staff in, including trauma-informed care with the Domestic Violence Network and Narcan training. For a lot of our branches have had that, but not all of them. So another big overall goal for the social work program is strengthening community partnerships and streamlining that process across the system. We have a lot of people reaching out to the same partners, and we want to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel. We also are doing ongoing needs assessments, which I feel like I skipped. That should have been earlier. Yes. So, let me go back, sorry. Because these are 2 things that I did want to touch on for sure. We have had 10 social work interns from 3 different universities, and then we've so far had 4 community needs assessments, one of which I'm doing right now with Eagle. Mm-hmm. So we want to continue doing those needs assessments because they've been really helpful. So just to wrap up, I wanted to touch on some feedback that I personally have heard. Being a part of the social work program at the library, which has been really great to hear. Something that I kind of very commonly hear is just, I didn't know the library did all of this whenever I'm able to connect a patron with a resource that they really needed. So this program is really helping people, and that's really great. On one of the surveys that I did with the needs assessment, one of the comments was, we weren't asking about social work, but they wanted to include, I love that you have a social worker that comes to the branches. In that survey at the time of this report, we had 75 responses at Eagle Branch, and just some very early results so far. Almost 21% of the patrons surveyed reported needing help with mental health needs, another 21 with financial needs, and then 15% also reported needs with housing. Overall, 79% of people who filled out that survey reported that they had unmet needs. And 51% reported that they were interested or extremely interested in programming about community resources. That's what I have. Any questions?
Are you Alyssa?
I'm Autumn.
Autumn.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a community conversation at Eagle Branch. I was so impressed with the interns there that I sent something to Yana because I wanted to know who the 2 interns were there.
Yeah.
And she told me they were Alyssa and Autumn.
Yep.
And it was just, there weren't a lot of people there. It was just me and one other person. But you all kept that conversation going so well. And you were just drawing out this gentleman's needs, and he wanted to talk, and you were talking right with. I was so impressed. Thank you very much for your work.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was the second listening session that I had as part of the needs assessment. And I also had another one that Dr. Matata was able to join. And we did have a few more participants in that one, but both of them have been really helpful to hear directly from patrons what their needs are that they see in the community.
Thank you.
And I would just second what Dr. Payne said. I was included on that. Thank you for your work. I thank all the interns and Yana as well. You guys are doing an amazing job, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
So
Dr. Palacio? Whoever really asked for
So the,
yeah.
thank you. So just quickly, this is all amazing and great. So my question is there any plans to expand and especially get some hours on the east side?
That's our desire, yes. We do hope to grow the program. We're currently essentially doing the math to see how we can add positions without hopefully having to subtract from some other location. But yeah, it's always been our goal to expand this beyond just central library, quote unquote, and serve the population of the system.
Thanks.
That was one of my, oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Mr. Biederman.
sorry, Dr.
Oh, that's
So last month we received a presentation in the facilities committee about some needs assessment for long-term planning for 10 and 20 years down the road. I was just wondering if the work that you guys are doing is being looped into that project or how there's cross-pollination.
Absolutely. So Adam can tell you in more detail, but the consultants who are doing that assessment are actually going to sit with our branch folks, and we're going to have detailed conversations about all the different things that we just talked about across the system. Short answer is yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. My question was about, you were talking about moving to serve the whole library system, and we're doing central and the west side. So how were these chosen as the places where office hours are held?
Yeah, so I can speak to what I know because I know ultimately these decisions were made, I think, before either of us came into our current roles. But a lot of it has to do with, leadership who is, willing to do the work that it takes to host an intern, because it is a lot of work. It's not an easy thing to have somebody new coming in and asking a bunch of questions and needing a place to be. That requires a lot of capacity. And so the West region in particular has been really on board with the social work program from the beginning. And there was also consistent reported need there. And then when I started, it was always intended that I would be then working with the West region. That was in my interview process. And then when I came, I did site visits and or interviews with branch managers at each of the branches in the West region. And so based on that feedback and the things there, I tried to identify places that were the highest need to hold my office hours there.
Okay, great. And the 3 universities that our interns came from?
Yeah, I believe it was Ball State, IUPUI, that's where I'm from, and University of Indianapolis.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question about on the survey. Thank you for that excellent presentation. I don't know, it was excellent. On the survey, you mentioned that folks were saying that they were looking for financial support. In the brochure, it says that the library social worker does not provide financial support. What are, I guess, some creative ways that social workers have addressed that issue, or how can it be addressed?
Yeah, for sure. So I say that, we can't provide direct financial support as far as we don't have a budget to be giving people money. So instead we do case management and direct people to longer term case management resources. So we have a lot of really great community partners that do longer term case management with people which is basically sitting down and looking through all of the many, many resources that are out there to try to find something that applies for them. So that can look like rental assistance, utility assistance. That can look like trying to find a job. That can look like a lot of different things. So helping people find where those resources already are, as opposed to directly giving it to them.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
So much community engagement. It was a great report, and you had to speed through some of it. So. It's very satisfying. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great report.
And that concludes the CEO report.
That concludes the CEO report. Thank you, Mr. CEO. We will move on. The agenda has unfinished and new business is the next two items. I don't believe there is any. There is item number 13, future agenda items. This is the time made available for discussion items that are not on the agenda, but which are of interest to library board members. And this opportunity is given now for us to suggest items to be included on future library board meeting agendas. Are there any suggestions from the board members about the October 2023 board meeting?
Madam President, I have an item to include tonight, and that is I want to commend you and the CEO because we're going to get out of here in 2 hours.
Oh, we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
And
Thank you.
I know at our retreat, that's going to be one of the topics that come up. And the amazing thing is you want to hear the different presentations from the different departments and facets of library operations. We must continue to do that.
Mhm.
But we need to also include a little outline so they'll know the parameters of the time, because we can't give those presentations up, because for people like me, it really informs me of dynamics and dimensions beyond just what I'm dealing with daily. And so I appreciate that. But overall, one of the first commandments of the board by what it seemed, try to keep your meetings to 2 hours or less. And that's an art form, and still respect the audience and respect the board members, and most of all, respect the time of the staff.
Yeah.
And so I want to commend you, CEO, and all of the presenters for meeting that task tonight.
Thank you, Dr. White. Any other questions, comments? I do have a request for for October meeting, which is, I was pleased to hear Chase Martin talk about the leadership program. And that is one of the things that I have been thinking about in terms of our leadership. So I would love to hear about that next month. If you could tell us how it goes and who we're serving and outcomes, that would be great. Any other suggestions for agenda items? If not, we'll move on. Our next regular meeting will be Monday, October 23rd, 2023 at the Hawville Branch Library at 2121 West Michigan Street. It will begin at 6:30. Is there any other business to be discussed? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:24.
So moved.
And a second? Okay, all approved?
Aye.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.